Welcome to the Fly Culture Podcast, bringing you interviews, reviews and fishing tips. Here's your host, Pete Thurston.
Welcome back to the Fly Culture Podcast. I'm going to start with a little question I was asked by somebody just the other day, and they asked me how we put this podcast together. And it was an interesting one for me to actually answer, because what we do with this, I try, similar, I guess, with the magazines, keep everything as open and as transparent as possible. So there's no editing. We don't do takes of things. The only time if we stop something is if the internet connection drops out or something freezes or something like that. But everything, what I've always wanted to and been keen to do is have a podcast that represents how we're feeling at that exact moment. So I don't change anything about it. And like I say, we don't have a second run about it. But Simon asked me about that just the other day, and I thought I would answer that and give people some insight. But today's a really interesting one. I'm going back to my old stomping ground, and I'm heading over to Essex, and I'm going to be talking stillwater fishing with Peter Thurston, and he owns and runs Thornwood Springs, which is just at the end of the central line in Epping in Essex. And what I'd like to do is learn about what goes into running a fishery, because I think to many of us it probably feels a little bit of a dream job that you go down to your fishery every day and chat to the anglers and all the other things that go into that. And it's kind of interesting as well that for me, the still water is really the heartbeat of fishing. And it's where many of us cut our teeth learning to fish. People still obviously fish those. And having seen the influx of anglers during the lockdown easings, that I thought it would be interesting to get an insight into that from somebody who runs it. So I'm really pleased to introduce Peter Thurston. Peter, it's great to have you along. It's great to catch up with you. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Good to see you again since the fly fair, but all good.
Good. I'm pleased to hear that. The fly fair, it was the one in London, wasn't it? And I know it was the very first one. I know I subsequently saw you at later ones as well there. And we were there with our fishing school, and Emma and I were there, and we were opposite you. And it was lovely catching up again with the old stomping ground and hearing about the fishery, and your passion from it came across immediately. It was just lovely to see how passionate you were about your fishery, and we're going to learn a lot about that today. But that was fun, the London Fair, wasn't it?
Yes, it was fun. It brought a lot of new people to the fishery. It's just a shame it didn't carry on and do a fourth one.
Yeah, it was an interesting concept, wasn't it? And where it was placed as well, and the timing and everything that went with it. And I know friends, my good friend Toby put on a show, and I know there's so much work goes into those things, doesn't it? And I wonder now if, I hope we'll have the British Fly Fair show in February next year, but we might see some more spring up if we're seeing this growth continue in fishing, that it may make more people want to attend from a trade point of view, and possibly from a participation, people who participate in it, I guess. Do you think?
Oh, 100%. I would imagine if the London Fly Fishing Fair went ahead this summer, the amount of new customers to fishing going to a show on their own doorstep would have felt it was just bad timing, I suppose, that it missed out on that side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I hope, if Fergus and John are listening, perhaps they will be. I wonder if one time soon they might consider it again. I really enjoyed it. It was really, really good fun. But how's things at the fishery? How's this period been for you?
Quite busy, quite testing, extremely hard work, but very cool. I mean, there's a lot of new people to the fishing. Some have taken it ducks to water. There's also been a lot of returners who fished maybe 20 years ago that have just had work, and children, and then forgotten about the fishing. There's been a lot of those returning, so that's been fantastic. Membership has. The fishing has been very varied. compared to the other years, but it's fished constantly. It's been a bit stop-start with certain rules and what you can do and what you can't do and how far you can travel and things like that, restrictions. But having said that, we have a lot of local people, on our doorstep and not too far away. So we're lucky in that aspect.
And I was thinking about that while you were talking, and it must be challenging ensuring distancing. And I guess, you want people to come to the fishery, but it must be difficult to enforce. Or I guess what they're probably doing is ringing you, are they, and saying, "Are you open? Can I come down?" And then go from there. How does that work?
Well, having online booking has simplified things. So there's been no interaction in the shop, shall we say. So small, either single people or single households of families have come from last. They get out their car, they go fishing. I actually haven't had very little problems with people getting together. Yes, we've had signs reminding them. We've removed certain things like shared airs and things that people share. But it's been, at the first you had to remind some of the older generation. But as it's progressed, it's just become second nature to most people. It's been quite easy, I'd say. And there's always been enough space. So that we haven't been overloaded so that people have to be particularly close to each other. So it's all panned out all right.
Good. That's good to hear. And do you think this spike that we've seen when we get to whatever normality becomes, do you think this spike will continue through? Those people, like you say, who've returned to it after a number of years, do you think that's something they're going to say, yep, this is definitely for me now?
A certain percentage, of course, I think have been reminded how much they loved it, and then just, super busyness, just they kind of put it to one side and forgot. The other side of it, once people can go away again and travel further afield, then you'll probably lose a percentage because people will be playing catch up on their holidays and their excursions. So, it's give and take of a little bit, but definitely there's a lot of new returners. And even if just 10% of the new people take it up and carry it on, then that's a bonus.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hopefully.
That'll be the interesting one, like you say, won't it? That where you've had people who have had a taster of it, learning and seeing how that has bitten them, and if that's something that follows through from there, that's going to be the growth bit for fishing as a whole, isn't it? If we can get those people engaged and continually interested in what's going on out there in the fishing world.
I hope so. Time will tell. The rod licenses in the Environment Agency have gone up a lot as well. I think in the tackle world, they've been extremely busy with, selling stuff. And I think the fly tying world of products has been a bit crazy. From talking to the Cortland guys and stuff like that, materials can't keep up with some of them, from what I hear. So, yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah, I think that seems to be the theme that's coming through from so many people, that things seem to be in a pretty good shape across the board. And that catch up, as you say, is kind of taking place, and long may that continue. We're a little industry, aren't we? And it's important we all try and support it and look after it, really. Otherwise, we could potentially lose it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's a lot of little factors within, the river guys only, and the dry fly people only, and the people that just want to eat lots of fish, and the people that don't ever kill anything. There's so many little slices of it that all add up. But so long as we all stick together, then that's all good. We don't want it to be in the blood sports thing or anything like that. The shooting side of certain restrictions. But what I did notice was the amount of people eating fish that didn't normally take so many fish, Obviously, they'd emptied their freezers in the first lockdown, and then they got for it again. And people that generally just fish, catch and release were all suddenly starting to take fish. I think the shops not being open, no fishmongers, all of these, no markets. So they were more appreciative of what they had before, but in some cases they couldn't be bothered to gut, which I think is a big part of it.
Yeah, I wonder as well if that was, bread making and the rush in on the flour, where everyone, you could see on social media there were loaves of bread everywhere. And I wonder if it's a similar sort of thing with the trout, in that people were exploring cookery a little bit more deeply, having a little bit more time. And I guess it's a fun and interesting way of catching your dinner. And like you say, it's reigniting that flame a little bit more, and people saying, yeah, actually, I'm going to look up an interesting menu and catch my meal, or catch my main course, I guess.
I saw a lot of it, of people taking pictures of, for their little Instagram post, who weren't generally fishermen, of coming, catching their own fish. And then, yes, I did hear people experimenting a lot more with actually how they cook it and flavors and stuff. So yeah, it's a win-win.
Yeah. You were talking about newcomers. I seem to remember, and please correct me if I'm wrong, being a West Ham fan, and I can crow about that a little bit at the moment, that was it true? I saw some images ages back. You had Andy Carroll up there.
Oh yes, Andy Carroll has been here with his father-in-law. I think his father-in-law lives just down the road in one of my seasoned holders, quite plush development. He brought him in. There's been a few names that have come here. We are, we're a good location for it, I suppose, aren't we? I've had, some very interesting types.
Yeah. I mentioned the Andy Carroll one because he was always injured when he was at West Ham, so I guess he was looking for something to do, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think you are. I'm not a huge football fan, but was it an arm, or was it? He did remember something about an injury while we were helping him. He had a lovely time. He's more of a carp fisherman, I think. I think he might even have his own little carp lake somewhere. But he did say he'd be back sometime, doesn't he?
He's gone back to Newcastle. So, but this is a fly fishing thing. So before I bore people, it's just nice to be able to talk about West Ham in a positive way for once. But the fishery, Thornwood Springs, is in a great location, as I said in the introduction, in that it's, if you are in London, it's just hop on the Central Line and out you go. And I wanted to learn a little bit about it, because I think the fishery was either just starting up or had just started when I left for Devon. And how long have you had the fishery now?
Well, in my head, it seems, but we've been open 7 years. It was 1 year of filling the first lake, and over 5 years of dealing with red tape at the council. So that is 17 years of work, but we've only been open for 11. The thing about the tube, up till last year, the tube was a lifeline for East End and since this time last year, the amount of people that have come on the tube, you could probably count on two hands. It's all a car thing now. But yeah, the tube does not get much use. I'm hoping that it gets more use again, and people get off the tube. And we've had people come on skateboards and come from the tube to here on a skateboard, others on mountain bikes, but there's also quite a few that actually walk from Epping Tube, and then they walk through the South Forest to across a couple of fields. So it's quite nice. It's not a nice walk in winter, but for a summer's evening, it's nice. Yeah, they might see some deer.
Lovely. So how did the fishery actually come about? And I know, and we'll go into the history of your life revolving around fishing at some stage. But how did Thornwood come about? How did you choose the area? It sounds as though it was difficult getting the planning and everything in place to get there. I wondered if you can tell us a little bit about that journey and why and how everything happened, really.
Right. Quite an interesting story. I actually had a near fatal accident when I was a tree surgeon, which changed. I was a tree surgeon after working on fisheries for a while, but I had a very bad accident. So then I was bedbound for a year, and then probably another year learning to walk. And my other passion is bikes, motorbikes. So then I just started fixing biking as something I could do sitting down. And I met a friend of a friend while fixing his bike who knew of someone that had some fishing lakes in Essex. So I said, oh, well, hook me up with him, because I wouldn't mind a job back in the fishery world again, because they're a bit short, few and far between in and around London. So then I went to meet with him, and he actually didn't have any fishing lakes. He had some plans of fishing lakes, and he wanted someone to do the planning permission, do the dig itself, and be a silent. He would be a silent partner, but provide the land and the plans. But when I saw the plans, it was commercial match fishing, carp pontoon every 10 meters, square banks, rectangular shaped lakes, and 6 feet deep. And it looked like my worst nightmare, like staring at two square things every day in the fields. You'd go mad in my. So I said, well, I'd like to be involved, but I don't know. I used to do a lot of carp fishing, but I've got no interest in running a carp lake. And if I am going to be involved, there's so many carp lakes in Essex. Let's do trout, because it's a bit of a dying thing around here. And I'm sure if it's done properly and, do the right things and it's done deep enough, and we can make it work. So I did take not a bit of a gamble, a massive gamble on lots of things, because I was building lakes on someone else's land, which could very easily have backfired. And I rearranged the plan. So what was originally a 6-acre lake, I think it was 6 acres, I downsized to 3 acres. We got the proper depth, downsized the surface area, went down to proper depths, found some decent things through the clay, which you wouldn't have got in the carp lake, being 6 feet deep. We went down to 21 feet, but I think it was below the 15 feet mark. We got through into chalk and gravel, and that's where the springs were. So it panned out all right. Took a long time to ready. It's literally only just maturing a little now. I'm happy with it now, but the first few years it was a constant building site. There was no vegetation. You were fishing a muddy clay pond for a couple of years, well, a year really, until it was properly full, until plants took over and kept the water clear. So, yeah, a long-term project, and it's still going on. A never-ending thing, really.
Well, most importantly, you're pretty well recovered from your accident and everything else.
Yeah.
Good.
That's
good.
Part of it. Without the accident, the fishery wouldn't be here. So yeah, it might have been a near-death experience, but it put me back onto my old career path, and certain things wouldn't have happened without it. So I'm thankful in a way, although it was extremely painful.
And it must be handy with the springs there as well. So you've got a constant flow of water. And do the springs help keep the water, certainly at those lower levels, at a relatively cool temperature that I guess is conducive for trout.
Yes, last year was a very low water table everywhere, and that was probably my worst year was last year. We had very strong November, December rains and floods, but then January to April there was no rain at all, and the water were virtually dried up. So I'd say the springs were doing nothing, but the fish, apart from the spark ticks, but the fish get through. They do keep it clear. The trout taste good, the rainbows that are eaten. There's not many muddy fish here, but we always get through, touch wood, every summer. And in August, not last year, but the year before, we had 26 brown trout caught in August on dry fly, which was a phenomenal amount it was quite a hot summer that summer. But then last year, in the strange year, I didn't have any brown trout caught in August. They started feeding again in September the 1st, which was when there was a first frost. But I didn't see any brown trout last summer, which wasn't really a heat-related thing. I put it down to strange pressures and a low water table. The two, everything behaved a bit different last year.
What's lovely is listening to you talk about the fishery, and we had 26 browns on dries on those sorts of dates. And they're the sort of things that you can tell if someone's passionate about their business, that they know that off the top of their head. And that's kind of cool to see. I really love that sort of stuff. And there's a big clue to anglers out there as well, isn't it? And I'm sure many of your people, and I bet, having not been there, but I bet there is a board letting people know about that stuff. But there's a massive clue there, isn't there, that people, if they go to the fishery, it's worth speaking to somebody like yourself, the manager or whoever it may be, to get that sort of information. Because you can ask somebody, I've always said it when I used to teach people on a lake, what you're using, and you could walk around and everyone will tell you something different. And to me, it was always about watching the depth, the speed of the retrieve, but also that sort of information makes the day much more enjoyable and, as a result of that, productive as well.
Well, there was two things you said there that I picked up on. One is this: instead of people ringing the fishery direct in today's world like they used to when I first started working on fisheries, they ask a forum, a stranger, a question of what's going on here today. And that drives me mad and quite laughable, really, because why are you asking a stranger on what's going on here today? He might not have been here for 5 years and he might never have been here. He needed to be here yesterday to give you an accurate clue of what's going on yesterday, different day to today. But that's quite interesting. The phone, people don't ask you that question anymore unless they're here. But I quite often find you give the information, they do the exact opposite anyway. But in the last week, I've had a very good river fisherman here. Last Sunday, he came and he was fishing size 18 red buzzers with a tiny little tail, 3 foot under a dry fly. And he was hoiking out some really big, sort of 6 to 10 pound fish. Everyone else was catching normal 4 pound stuff, but he was getting a real good variety. And then he came back again on Friday, 5 days later. He's not a regular here. And he did the same thing in the morning, and we'd had a frost. No one's catching. And then he starts experimenting a bit more with depths, and he finds that they're 8 feet down morning. Had a few fish, and then as it was warming up, they came higher in the layers, and he put on a cruncher on the end and had a little traffic light buzzer on the dropper. And I think he finished his day with 12 or 13 fish. 6 of them were brown trout. Nothing massive that day, 3-4 pound fish, but really beautiful, resident fish, probably 3/4 of what he caught. He gave his fly combination to the guy next door, who proceeded fishing the same patch of water. So sometimes it is all about, that extra bit of input with the depth, or how he had a strange retrieve on that day, and it was his strange retrieve and movement of the fly that was catching him all the fish. It was pretty obvious. So it is interesting watching different anglers and, their take on it.
Yeah, it must be, sitting from your vantage point, seeing these sorts of things unfold must be, really interesting. I want you to go back to when you were setting up the fishery, and you said, it took some time to settle, because as a commercial venture, it could be argued that you'd probably want to get bums on seats pretty quickly and people through the door. But it seems as though, and I seem to remember now, you've said that from be it a forum, be it wherever, that you were really keen, weren't you, to let everything settle, let everything find its way, let the bugs come. And was that a difficult process in the sense of you thinking, I'm losing my potential to earn money here? Or was it driven by the fact that you just wanted to get it right the first time when you opened it?
I think that if you deal with account in 5 years, unpaid, you're either mad or ridiculously patient, and then you wait a year for it to fill, and then it's only half full. So it was full enough to put some fish in and start fishing, but it wasn't full. That came on year 2. When the first people, it was 2 people that came who fished the half full first lake, and I felt really sad, really, because I don't know, I just looked at it, I'd filled it, and I'd put some plants in here and there, and it just, yes, it was the start of being a commercial trout fishery, but my private little thing in my head that I never see anyone at had suddenly had some people at, which, yes, you need the people to pay the bills. There was a strange feeling watching it being fished for the first time by people that had given me some money to catch some fish. It was just a very strange feeling. As for putting things in there, yes, I waited for things to get there naturally. There's a stream that runs around the land, and I took some starwort and iris, mist, that kind of thing from there, and just transferred it. And from my flat, when I used to live in North London, because I was commuting to here before it was open, along a place called the New River, then I would take different types of weeds out, some oxygenators. Some were good, some were bad, some were a bit more invasive than others. And with that came a lot of stuff. There's a pond in Epping Forest that I did the same thing for another pond plant that I didn't get from the New River. I just liked the look of it. I can't remember what it was. So I went back. I think I went back on my bike actually and just filled a bag up on my backpack, or me and Red. And when we got the knitted this loose weed out there, I don't know what it was. In it was lots of tiny fry, about 5 mil. So I thought, oh, I'll have those as well. The little silverfish, I thought they were roach at first, but that's what grew into the love I got here. So yeah, I took 50. I think I counted 50 5 mil things that I assumed were roach, just to start off a little fish program, when literally it was probably the first piece of water I put these fish in. The first part of one lake was probably 3 feet deep and 18 feet across. It was the first time it rained, I think. So it wasn't actually from the spring end, it was from the other end that's a bit deeper. So I just put it in there and, kept my fingers crossed. And they turned into the beautiful rudd that we have today here, which are a great food source for the trout. Live really happily in there. The whatever is just so right for British record rudd that I know is in there, and they don't stir up the bottom. And I've since heard that the pond that I got those rudd from, they've lost all the fish, be it cormorants, pollution, or or people nicking the fish, or a combination of all three. So I did those rather a favour, because they've now got a lovely home here, and the DNA is still going on.
Nice, excellent. And so things go on.
From a river, I got a load of chalk from a riverbed. I think it might have been the Avon, with some other bugs from there. So I went with a friend who had a bit of access to it, and we brought back a load of stuff there as well.
Nice. It was interesting. I know we were talking off mic that when I lived that neck of the woods, that I put an advert in, I think it was the National Farmers Journal or something like that, about, seeing if a farm had a pond they'd be interested in renting out. The plan, the dream was to put some trout in it. And somebody actually contacted me, and it was a little way away from where you are, but he'd got a grant, I guess, to be able to dig a reservoir and stuff. So it worked really, really well. But it was a similar sort of thing for me, not quite on the same scale, but it was fascinating. I learned so much about the process. And I know in Epping, I used to pick up, we were saying the aquatic centre, which I just learnt from you this morning, is going to be turned into houses. But I'd go in there and say, got some bloodworm? And they'd say, yep. And I said, how many have you got? And because they were like 10p a bag, and because it was for normal ponds, so I'd come out with boxes of bloodworm, and once obviously the lake had filled up, that I'd populate it with that. And like you say, I learnt about starwort. I stayed clear of Canadian pondweed because I didn't think I'd be able to manage that. And where I was sort of on the Hertfordshire border, so I think it was about 50% chalk, so you could see the fish as well. And it was a really interesting process to learn about, not in what you're doing, but looking after fish, keeping them in a good environment, and learning about what goes into that environment. So it was a really interesting process that I took so much from and remember so fondly. That wasn't until the cormorants turned up, which was kind of interesting. And I know you've been glancing out the window, and I suspect that's probably what you're looking at too, is it?
My eyes, whenever I'm talking to people in the car park, it's always up, up there somewhere. This time of year, especially if you weren't on site at your place, the places that they're not on site, it's such an impossible lose-lose scenario, I'd imagine, with the birds nowadays. And it's only worse now than when you had that place. They are, the scourge. But fortunately, I live on site, and they can see me and then fly away. But if you let them have a hold, they don't take long. And then one brings his friend the next day, and then two bring their two other friends the next day, and then you've got a whole load of them. But I am quite close to Walthamstow, and I don't know how many they have there, 200 or something. And also on the River Lee, there's some quite big patches of them up there. But if I'm out and about, I get up at dawn every day of summer, but sometimes I might have to be getting up at 5 o'clock, 4:30 to deal with them, scare them off, and blah blah blah. Around in the quad, and don't let them land. They'll fly off somewhere else. They won't bother landing. They'll just circle, see you, go somewhere else. If I'm walking the dog, there's so many things, but you've just got to be visible. I've tried so many different things, scarecrows, blah, blah, blah. Nothing works apart from movement, being out there. Obviously, things that make noises, bird scarers, but the main thing is just being visible. If you're not on site, that's when they'll take a massive hold. And I watch them. They circle for ages. They come lower and lower. They look at me, and then they think, oh, I know a lake over there where there's no one there yet. And I just see, you can see how their mind works.
Yeah.
Like a cool
man. You talk about living on site as well. And, I get the sense that there's the lodge there, and you have quite a good social scene there as well. Do you want to tell me a little bit about that and how you got that going?
Well, we used to have a good social scene there. Now it's all individuals.
Exactly.
things. But I'm looking forward to that getting back again. We used to have quite a lot of charity things. We have Fishing for Heroes here. Well, another one we used to have. They'll be itching to come back. So yeah, we have social matches that aren't based upon big prizes and money. Just social fun get-togethers where it's not too competitive. It's all just a fun thing, but mainly it will be a charity kind of thing. Fishing is a good event of monthly groups of of them coming here, but they haven't been allowed to come all year. They did book 3 days to start again once we got the ball rolling again after the last summer of them not being allowed to travel and them not having group. And then we did get another 3 dates in the diary, which would have been the 3 of the whole year. Then just as we'd got it all planned again, we had to stop again because the travel restrictions came in again. I think it was like that at the start of the year. They were just about to start in March, and then they couldn't come. It's just been like that for loads of different things. But yeah, there's a plenty going on here with nice barbecues in summer. Fortunately, looking forward to a lot more when the clocks go forward and normality resumes, fingers crossed, and all those things can take off again. But there's a little bit of everything here.
Yeah, nice. It was interesting you mentioned Fishing for Heroes. Is that Paul you deal with?
That is Paul West and the lot at Lady Bower. Yeah, he's been coming here a long time.
I've been doing those down in Devon, or I did when I was guiding and instructing, and it's probably one of the most rewarding things I've done in fishing, and to get people really into it, to see them catch or teach them the cast, see them catch their first fish was a hugely rewarding experience.
Was it Bigwell, the one you were going to in Devon? Was it?
No, it's Bellbrook.
Bellbrook, and you began with a B.
Yeah.
No, it is very rewarding, especially with people with problems, or anxiety or depression, or I have seen a lot of that this year with certain people, and they really, really do need their fishing. I think it's bad and wrong that they can't do these things because there's no substitute. They haven't been given something else to do. And when you have these groups on a regular basis and you get to know some of the guys, some of them look forward to it so much. I don't know how far away they all are. They're all in different parts of the world. They meet up at a fishery and they have. But yeah, I think it would be terrible being stuck at home without certain things that are your escape. There's no doubt about it. It is a real good well-being thing. We all know that. But for some, it's more than others. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, we talked about, and people were talking about mental health and fishing be an outlet for that. And it was, our rivers, we travelled down to the river the other day. It's only a few minutes away. It's not far at all. And I said to Emma yesterday, funnily enough, I said, I feel completely different having done that. We've tried to we have stuck to lockdown totally. And in January and into March, I'd been to the post office 3 miles away once, and that was it. I'd been nowhere. And it was amazing to be able to go out and go somewhere that means so much to you and be able to experience that has been absolutely extraordinary. And I'm a bit old school that, you just grin and get on with it. And I always have done. But it was interesting to see what that even did for me. For somebody, it's the longest I'd been without fishing. And I thought I was fine about it, to be perfectly honest. But then you get there and you suddenly realise, actually, this has done me so much good. So my hope is that these things do start to lift. It looks as though, and I hope that there is light at the end of the tunnel, that it will be that people can go visit fisheries, rivers, reservoirs, wherever it may be. So, yeah, I've definitely seen that. And as you say, with the Fishing for Heroes, the PTSD and everything that's gone with it is extraordinary, isn't it? And how those people have had to deal with that and how fishing has helped them in such a profound and deep way.
Oh, it is. It's very obvious as well. Some of the guys actually wanted to stay on here and sleep here one night, just outside. And this was before lockdown. He said to me this just because one of them really didn't like being inside any building ever. Not even when he goes to sleep. He'd rather just sleep outside because he feels safer. And it's very, you're very grateful and how lucky you are to appreciate what you've got. But there are so many people that have given so much and then they actually don't get much help, and they shouldn't be in these predicaments after giving so much. So there are those groups, but there's also quite a lot of single guys out there as customers you get to know who do have different mental health problems for different reasons, and some of them have gone stir crazy. And after that first lockdown, where most people took it for granted that they just came to the fishery or a fishery, then you'd get them being so grateful that you're open. And it's a bit much when they're saying thank you so hard for providing their day, when before it was just, we all took it for granted. You take it for granted. But to them, it was just the whole world and, just being outside again. It's amazing. Everything's fantastic. And some, the suicide rate has gone up. I mean, I've had two of my friends end up in hospital in that last time. And in the last 10 years, I haven't had two of my friends try to do that. We all know it's gone up massively. And there are people who can't take things. And some people feel that's the only way out. But, it's a very dark side. But when people tell you to your face who you've known have had mental health problems or lost their old businesses, not through COVID, but before, the history of some of your customers. And some of them are very fragile. And some will say, oh, thanks so much. I don't know how much longer I could go before I kill myself or I kill someone else. And it's like, you don't know whether it's just a real joke or, 10% of it probably could well be potentially real words or real thoughts. If you're just selling a ticket, but you don't get to know individuals, you don't know about those because you don't hear it, you don't interact with them. But some of your regular, you do know a lot of very, sad things sometimes.
Yeah, and the good things too. And, I remember my friend Carl Humphreys used to run a fishery up in Staffordshire called Durnford. And I went up and visited that once. And the scene he had there was amazing. And similar sort of setup as yourself. But he would get people who would just come up, not even fishing, just to sit in the lodge there and chat with their friends and put the world to rights. And it became more than the fishing, that they'd just go up there and hang out. And do you get a similar thing?
I do have some of those. I mean, I've got a couple of regular people who I haven't seen in the last year. Some of them are cancer sufferers. Two of them are cancer sufferers. But they'd just come. I mean, one of them's been coming as long as I've been open, 10 years. And he would come just to be outside, hold a rod. He would fish, but he wouldn't catch many fish. And he was never ever bothered by not catching many fish, just because it was just all about being outside, seeing the sunset or the sunrise, listening to the birds, seeing a deer or a kingfisher. And after, I think it was about 3 years, I said, look, I can't have you not catching any fish anymore. I'm going to come up and catch fish with you after 2 hours if you haven't caught fish, he'd always call himself my best customer because he never catches any fish, in a jokey way. And he's quite happy, just never catching any fish. And then it was a Praza time, and I said, look, take this buzzer up there, and we're going to catch some fish. So I left him alone for a couple of hours, and I went up there and went, how you doing? Knowing what the answer would be. He's never caught any fish. I went, look, give me the rod. We'll have a little look on what they're doing. And I had a cast. I said, watch the end of that line. And he couldn't see the bites as it's moving to the buzzer. And I'd say, can you see that? Can you see that? No. He'd only see a bite probably if it ripped the rod out of his hands. But the really tough movement on the floating line, he'd never see. And on about the 10th time of me saying on a different cast, have you seen it? Have you seen it? Have you seen it? I said, I'm going to strike this next one and hopefully we'll hook the fish. And he hooked the fish. We hooked the fish. We promptly lost the fish, but it was a good demo of learning something that is probably going on all the time to him, but he's just not seeing. You know, he's probably looking the other way at the birds as well. So some people and they're in the more competitive world, if I've only caught 12, some people have been coming here for 10 years, never caught 12, and they'd be happy to catch 5. But some people are just, you see them sitting down and just looking and listening, not always fishing. So there are some people that it's more about just the outside and the fresh air and the space. We do get amazing sunsets here, which a lot of people stay for. Yeah,
nice. I wanted to talk to you because you mentioned Spartics, which I'd like to learn a little bit more about. And I know you have lots of species of trout in there. You have rainbows, browns, blues. I think I saw a picture of a tiger trout the other day. Was that a conscious decision to stock a nice variety of fish for your anglers?
No. Originally, I'd set out to be... I've never liked goldens or fancy things or landlocked salmon. Any of the things years ago when I saw them at various places, I never liked them. And I did work at somewhere that stocked some stillwater salmon, and they coloured up quite quickly and didn't look very nice not very long after. And my conscious decision when I opened was I'll just be a pure rainbow and brown trout place, but a real focus on brown trout. But it was at that London fly fishing fair where I saw the lads from Torrey Trout Farm in Somerset and the tank of live fish. And I think it was really the tigers that really did it for me. The tiger trout, they just looked stunning. And so I put an order in and it's all led from there. And then we waited a couple of years to get our hands on some Spartics, I think it was. But we've had everything that they've had, some goldens occasionally off them, some blues, tigers, Spartics, and a bit of variety does make people travel that bit further, because there's lots of places stocking £2 rainbows, £2 rainbows, £2 rainbows. You can catch 22-pound rainbows in a day and never catch a big fish or a trout. And variety makes it that much more interesting. And people will make the effort to go that bit further if they know you've got some tiger trout or they've never caught something like that. And it makes them super happy if it happens for them, which is just, I've worked out time. They feed in different ways. The tiger trout are actually very active in summer, apart from last summer. They behave like brown trout. But all the other summers, I've had tigers now, 3 or 4 years. The first year of that fair, so it might have been 4 years of having tigers, I think. But the first 3 years, you could sight fish them all summer. They'll be in the margins. They're always visible. They're always jumping. Just last year, they behaved like brown trout and disappeared. And I didn't see any. But they started getting caught again once the water levels rose and pressure returned to normal. got cold again after that frost. They behaved exactly the same as the browns. They started showing again. It was as if they just weren't there. They vanished from the edge. But why I really love them is you normally could just see them all day, every day. Doesn't matter about being a midday sun. They'll be there in the edge, and you can drop a dry blue damsel on their nose, and they'll jump for them. Before, when they were really performing, 3 people caught mid-cast a tiger with a blue dry damsel in the air. And it's fantastic when people come and say that to you, and something amazing happened and they saw it all, but it didn't happen last summer.
Yeah. It's made me really smart. Yeah, it's made me really smart, because I must admit, when I stocked this lake, I got them from Duncton Mill down in Sussex, and I had some tigers. Yeah. And your description is exactly how I remember them, and tight in, dry fly, and I think it's the dumb brook trout gene in them that makes them so keen for some of that stuff, with a bit of the brown wariness as well. But it just, when you were describing that, brought back so many happy memories to me. And I only had, I think I had 10, 12, 15 of them, something like that. But we caught them, and I knew where I could catch them. And like you say, you could see them as well, which was really, really thrilling. But I know one of your passions as well is to try and bring on sizable fish as well. And that's been an interesting process for you, hasn't it?
Yes. The biggest fish with brown number one. I did my first trout when I was a kid was 22 pounds when I was piping, and I didn't know what it was, and I took it home to give to my mum thinking it was a salmon, which it wasn't. When I started working at the Spar Salt place like a year later, I showed them this picture of a salmon that we'd eaten by then, and it turned out it was a British record brown trout at 22 pounds. And the record back then, 1986, I think, was 19.5 pounds, and it had stood for like 30 years or something. And I'd eaten this thing that was potentially 3 pounds bigger. I didn't even know what it was. All I knew is that it looked like a salmon. It had a big cut jaw. I was a pike angler back then, and I caught this big thing that, had to be a salmon. It's got a kite. So my mum would like that. So I took it home. And then ever since then, I've always felt a bit guilty about killing it. So the plan with the big fish was I wanted to grow another 22-pound fish and release it, put it back. So the first one we put in was 18 pounds. That was a lovely brown trout, never got caught, snapped about 4 or 5 people's lines, but never got landed. Got seen a few times. The one guy actually hooked it twice. One guy really put a lot of time into landing it. He hooked it the first time on 10-pound line, snapped him. Second time, I think he'd upped his game to 14-pound end tippet with his snakes on. Again, snapped him. And then I thought, right, well, let's go for another few big ones. So I got the farm to do something he'd never done before, which was quite expensive, very expensive, and very long time. We put a load of 10-pounders aside, browns at the farm, and we fed them, not the huge growth rate stuff that some of the places use, make them a bit too carp-shaped bellies. And it was 5 years of growth from 10 pound to get to 20. 20, and a few in the stack where there was 2 of them at 22 pound and 21 pound, and the rest we had a few other problems with, like jumping out of the pond, etc., etc. So we did have maybe 15 nudging that, and we only got 2 in the end after all that feed to get to that. And it's just terrible when you come in and an otter's just eating the gills of a 19.5 pounder first after all that work. And it's a bit sad, but we did get 2 22s. They went in, same thing happened. They eat ducks and they eat the rudd, and they snap people's lines occasionally, but not landed again. But it's a great story and it's a great sight if it actually rolls in front of you or it follows you in and then gives you a big splash. The people that have seen it know, and that's what we're all about. I don't want it actually caught. It's the best thing that it gets lost because then it doesn't get handled badly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Again, it's reminded me. And when I stocked this little pond with just £1 fish, but my friend said, "I want to buy you a big one." So he bought me as a gift £8 brown, and his name was Stephen Quinn. So we called the brown Quinny. And I remember when we stocked the pond that we left it for a while and went to the pub, and then came back and just as we walked around, because I wanted to see if all the fish had made it in okay, that he swam up and we saw him and then he swam away again, which was really thrilling. And then my friend Ray, who I mentioned a lot in these podcasts, came over and he caught Quinny as well, which was kind of cool. So I hope he's still there. He probably won't be now, but I hope he's there living a nice retirement.
Well, if he's an old strain brown, he could be. It was a long
time, yeah.
If they were boys, they'd be the older strain, so they could live a bit longer. Nice to think of.
It was really cool. It was really good fun. So tell me about looking from the outside, I guess, having that fishery must be, and as somebody, working, you're deeply entrenched in it. Is it your dream job? Is it everything you hoped it would be and has turned out to be everything you'd want it to be?
If you'd asked me that question 2 years ago, I'd probably say 3 years ago, I was a bit ill and run down, and the Chinese medicine getting lots of special treatments. Now, yes, it is. There's light at the end of the tunnel, because opening without money and doing things as they come, like if you open with one lake, but you don't have electric, water, or a car park, or a lodge, or toilets, or absolutely anything, I didn't realise how much everything would cost and how long certain things would take. So it is a labour of love, but once you're committed, you're committed. You just can't stop. It's 7 days a week. I just thought, might have been a bit naive, lakes, fishing, but there was, so much more needed of infrastructure, which people take for granted. Oh, don't go there. He hasn't got a lodge. When I didn't have a lodge. I'm sure lots of other places that are really established never had a lodge when they opened, but because they have only been going there for 10 years and the place started 50 years ago, they remember the lodge, which some people are patient and understanding. I did meet some people at the fly fair that go, "Oh, I came once when you just opened," which would have been when I had no grass, no greenery, but you were really muddy and there was no trees. And I asked, "You live really local. Didn't you think things would grow?" And because it was muddy 10 years ago. My God, that's all I've been doing is chainsawing and planting, and I can't keep up with it all. The growth is ridiculous. I can't tell you how many times we've dragged the weed out, had diggers in to remove bulrushes and stuff because things have grown so quickly. I actually know older lakes that I can only assume it's either got bad runoff or pesticides or fertilizers, which restricts certain things growing. Because I know older lakes that have been dug that don't look as old as mine, but when mine's in bloom in summer, it's just like looks like it's been there forever now. But one of the lakes I did overplant, hence I have to sometimes get a digger in and remove some of the mace and stuff, sedge. And one I underplanted for the very reason that I wanted two totally different themes, which has panned out quite well. But it is my dream job. There's but I need 5 of me sometimes.
It must,
because it's not the kind of thing you could leave to the neighbour and go, yeah, look after that. I'm going on holiday for a month.
yeah. It must be one of those difficult. And you saying the people you met at the fair, that I hope they popped back again and had a look and saw how things had changed. But that's one of the difficult things. It's always struck me, that balancing act, even from a stocking point of view, that you could have anglers that say, well, I don't like to fish here because there's too many fish, it's too easy. And then anglers, you ease that back a bit, and then you can get anglers saying, well, it's too difficult because I'm not catching fish. That must be a really difficult act to balance and keep all parties happy, I guess.
Yes. Having 3 lakes kind of makes it 3 totally different styles. And the best thing I ever did was split one of the lakes, so there's always an easy. Very beginner friendly, very child friendly, so they all show an interest because they'll get bites quickly. They'll want to come back next week because they had so much fun. But the other ones, it's a good confidence boosting end for people struggling on a harder lake when people are catching all around them. And sometimes I say to them, why don't you just go and grab a fish from next door, get something in your bag, and then come back with something in your bag, because you're spending too much energy watching 2 guys either side of you, pulling out fish on a Griffiths gnat, and you're determined to fish a blueflash damsel when they're not chasing. So, but at the same time, you wonder, why is he catching 10 fish and this guy's catching 20 fish and I'm catching nothing between them? Because some people watch other people and then it takes away whatever they might be doing themselves, and they're going to miss their one and only bite if they're going to get a bite. But the very fact of getting a fish in the bag that they can go home with something already and it's lunchtime, then they can go back there with a newfound confidence. I've caught a fish. And then they can go on one of the harder things. And sometimes it works. The pressure's off them. They've caught something. They're a little bit more relaxed. They might spend a few more hours doing it, and then they'll eventually catch one over there, which is good. There are people that won't fish my stalking pond where the 22 brown lives, because it is a succession of 4 pools and a little river section. There's 23 feet deep, huge volume in it. It's a lot of water, but it's not particularly big. And the people that, I'm not fishing that's tiny. But if you look at it because it's all so small and intricate, when you're on a pool, yes, you can cast across it, of course. But when you look at it from above on the satellite, it's not far off the length of one of the other lakes. It's just very split out and bendy and, nooks and crannies. But people won't fish it because they judge it as being easy. And you tell that to the guy that's on there once a week trying to catch my 22-pound brown trout, stalking around being really quiet and delicate. And some people judge things on the wrong things. And some people, I just call it a catch and keep end. My easy end, which I shouldn't really call it that, but it is that. If you labelled it as, what did I call it at the start? But I had a name for it, and it didn't go down very well because I'm not a beginner, I'm not going in there. But if you just call it catch and keep, then they'll go in there. But I think I called it a beginner friendly end or something, and it didn't go down well as a name because I'm not going in there. Everyone will watch me because I'm going in there, and I shouldn't be going in there because I've been doing fishing for 40 years. But there's different levels of fishing for 40 years on a catch and release general place.
Yeah. So you live on this 7 days a week. Do you pick up a rod and say, I'm going to go and have a few casts? Or does your fishing take you somewhere else? Do you need to get away to go fish?
A bit of both. I used to go away with some of my regulars here, and I'd go sea fishing on a boat for the day as a getting away, thing. If finances would allow, I would obviously be marlin fishing somewhere else, and someone would be looking after the place for a month. But finances have never allowed that in the last 10 years, or up to date. I go through phases of fishing. I'm really happy helping beginners catch their first trout. I'm really happy watching people progress and helping people who are struggling do the right thing, and then suddenly they're doing the right thing and they're catching fish. Myself fishing here, in 10 years of, or 11 years of living here, I've probably never fished more than 2 hours. My fishing fix is really dry fly. If there's a good rise in an evening, I'll go and have half an hour. And every year I say, I get back into fishing again. I go, I must do that again. I like it. And I go through phases of just being so busy doing jobs that I forget about the fishing. And then I think, right, I'm going to fish tonight and I'm going to have half an hour. And then I enjoy it so much, I have the next night. And that might go on for a week of half hour here, maybe an hour of dry fly. But then I did go through a phase of fishing a sinking line for snakes and catching bigger, more resident fish that are all out of sight. But I kept the same fly on for about 6 months. And I had to break up the rod because I thought, well, I'm catching so many decent, big-tailed, big-headed fish that I've got to go back to my dry fly rods, which I did. But my aim this year is more fishing, yeah. But it's very easy to get stuck. I've got to do that in the hedge. I've got to do that in the ditch. I've got to do that in the shop. It's just too much to do that it prevents it quite a lot.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's often I hear that is the case, that people who live right on top of fishing don't fish that often. And I hear that so many times, and it's interesting just to hear that again. But you painted such a lovely picture of the fishery. How can people, if they want to come visit you, how can they get hold of you and how do they find you?
Well, we are on all the social platforms. Some of them are better run than others. I might pay a little bit more attention to some of them than others, and I'm a bit backward in others after my other half or daughter have set me up and shown me how to tweet or Instagram and other stuff. We do have a YouTube channel, but Facebook, website as a direct email, and obviously the phone, the good old-fashioned phone, is often quite good for finding out what's working on the day. But email is probably the most popular thing.
And do you want to give me the website address and your email address?
Okay, it's www.thornwoodsprings.com, and the email is peter@thornwoodsprings.com. Facebook is the same, Thornwood Springs. There's a business page and a Peter at Thornwood for friends. But on the business page, Thornwood Springs, I do all the updates once a week generally. Sometimes it might have no fish pictures. It might just be birds or sunsets and sunrises. And then other times it might just be a whole stream of lots of different types of beautiful fish. And if there's something interesting going on, then it will be in the script. But lovely. I try and do that weekly, really.
Lovely. And that's, like you say, a good place to look for up-to-date information, or, like you say, phoning or emailing as well. But we've chatted for well over an hour now, and it's been really what I love. I've got to make a confession first, that my aunt used to work for Epping Council. So I hope I don't think she was in that department. Yeah, I'll find out. But I don't think she was anything to do.
Council, so it might be a positive name, or hopefully it's not.
Yeah, she's far too nice for that. So
numerous times of blaming the Environment Agency or submitting plans that got lost, and you name it. Any number of things were going on to prevent the fishing lakes being dug. But now everyone's on side, and I'm on the Epping Forest tourism guide, and they're quite behind me, really.
Brilliant. That's great to hear. I thought I'd better get that out in the open just in case anyway.
I have read that.
It's been really lovely to catch up with you. I want to thank you for your honesty and openness about all aspects of it, and about, I guess many people consider it a dream job. And I think it's been really important, along with being interesting, to learn about the process. And what comes across to me most of all is your passion for it, Peter, as well, which you did when we first met. And that doesn't seem to have dulled down in any way, shape or form. And it seems to me as though you care deeply about your visitors and the fishery, continually trying to make it better for them. And that's what anglers need, people like yourself looking after them and making sure that you can deliver them the best possible fishery that you can. And I think that's commendable. And thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today.
Thank you, Pete, as well. And hopefully when you're in our neck of the woods, if you ever get out of Devon, you can always pop in, have a fish.
I tell you, it's hard to...
I'll look you up. But it was nice to catch up after the fair.
Absolutely. And, as I said, when things allow, I would very much like to, and Emma's been saying for quite some time, that we need to meet up with you when we were doing face-to-face ones. That's what I was hoping to try and do. So my hope is that I will get there some stage soon, and I might even bring my aunt over, and then you can see whether you've met her or not.
Fine. Lovely.
Thanks, Peter, so much. It's been great to speak to you, and thanks again for being a guest.
Okay, look after yourself, and hopefully we'll talk soon, and we'll see you all fishing here sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone for listening to the Fly Culture podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this one. This has been a fascinating insight into running a small still water, and I hope you've enjoyed this one as much as me. So thank you very much indeed for listening. There'll be plenty more soon.
The Fly Culture podcast is brought to you in association with Fly Culture, a quarterly print magazine. For more information, please visit flyculturemag.com. You can also find Fly Culture on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter.